I speak quite openly about my disdain for Donald Trump, but really any tyrant, dictator, any human rights issues, really. Um, I think you can go down a rabbit hole of constantly reporting on things if you go down a certain path. So I'd rather just focus most of my energy in other directions. But sometimes you can't not talk about it, because it's like a culmination of things, and then you go, "Oh, goddamn!" So I'd be reluctant to do the video just because I don't really like talking about him, to be honest. But like I said, it was a culmination, and it was like, okay, well, we're gonna have to address this because it's sort of I'm seeing other content now from highly established people who are saying similar things to how I've been seeing it. Now, of course, we all see things in our own unique way, and there'd be people that perhaps have seen it a similar way to me as well earlier in the journey too. Like I did a video, I don't know if it's a month or so ago, and I said about like I wouldn't be surprised if Trump wants his face on Mount Rushmore. He wants to go down in history. He wants to be a martyr. Like he just wants to be. He wants to actually be immortalized. I think he wants to be considered a deity or something. But again, because of his age, he becomes unhinged because if you think about it, like when someone gets really old, they've got less to lose, and it's all about for some people, it's all about legacy at that point. So they just really want to be remembered, and it doesn't matter the collateral damage because they're not going to be there to witness it. And the other side of that is they genuinely just don't care because it's all about them. So who cares about the collateral damage in the process? It's like a delusion of grandeur. That's really what Trump is. It's crazy. So if you actually watch him, he's quite petulant. He's not very articulate, but likes to come across as intelligent. I don't think so at all. When you surround yourself with yes people, and that's all you surround yourself with, it shows a weak intelligence and a weak mindset. Otherwise, you could be comfortable. I think having other people tell you the truth. Like me personally, I'm someone that just speaks the truth all the time. Like I just don't care because I don't see the point of lying and saying something just to ease a burden or something. It's like it doesn't solve a problem. It's just it's just delaying and inevitable, isn't it? So, like for instance, with Trump, it's like you've got people saying yes to him all the time, but then how's he going to grow and how's he going to learn and how's he going to realize that sometimes some things are not good, but people are too interested in their own sort of like career, so they'll just agree with whatever he has to say and just fall in line because they see career progression. That's what a lot of it is. It's weak. So effectively, you've got weak-minded people subservient to a very weak-minded leader. And I find that it's quite frightening, really, because a strong leader, a confident leader, would rather have intelligent people around them, people who tell them some firm truths and then use their discernment as to what they want to do. Because, of course, if you're the leader, it's still your final decision. But I think having as much information as possible and not being afraid of information, I think is a very, very strong position to be in and favorable, of course, because obviously the more intelligence you have around you, the more it's going to make you, it's going to feed onto you and you're going to become more intelligent too. But as a byproduct, I think ain't that something you should strive for? But with Trump, he's incredibly weak. He's very shallow. So when someone says something he doesn't like, you can see immediately he's trying to find a way to wiggle around it. And then there's a very petulant way to end things. Like this reporter recently told him of a term that people have been using for him he didn't like. And at the very end, he was like, that was not a very nice thing to say. Don't say that again. And it's like, it just makes you laugh. I can't help but laugh at the guy. Because, like, people might think, oh, it's crazy that people speak out against very powerful leaders. But the reality is he's not going to be powerful forever. It's a period of time where people are appeasing him. Even world leaders are having, you can tell, even world leaders are having to bite their tongue a little bit because, of course, they want democracy, they want diplomacy. And they realize they're going to have a connection, like, for instance, when it comes to America, for long periods, especially after Trump's gone. So they've got to try and find a way to have common ground now just to continue to have that relationship because it's an important dynamic around the world. But you can tell the majority, if not all of them, don't respect or like him. But it's the fact that he represents America. That's literally what it is. But if you can tell, it's like even the people who you would think he's aiding in a sense don't respect him. They just play him like a fiddle. He's a very weak leader, and that's quite crazy to think that a president is a weak leader. Like, how the hell did they get there? They play on people's emotions and vulnerabilities. If something's happening in people's lives, they play on that, and then that's how they get elected. So they'll say the right things, and a lot of politicians do that. They say all the right things to those that are going to vote, And then as soon as they get in power, they fulfill their agenda rather than what the what do you call it? Oh, I can't remember what you call it now. Where they set out their proposals and things. They don't really go with what they said they were going to do. Now they're going to do their own thing. And like, for instance, he can't stop lying. He keeps saying energy prices are going. I'm not in America, so I don't know 100% the statistics, but you see a lot of people going mental. So it's kind of like, well, the people are speaking and saying that's not quite right. He's saying the price of groceries, everything's coming down, yet he's putting tariffs on everything. So of course the prices are going up because the tariffs are actually imposed on the importers, who then are the ones selling or distributing the products, which of course makes the price go up. But Trump makes it sound like it's the people who are exporting, so it's the countries sending them, who are paying the price. That's not the case at all. But anyway, let's not go there. So I've got about 3 videos. That's what I said. You know, it was on the back of the fact that I see some other people talking, and people who are far more educated on specific topics as well. And it was just interesting to see that, you know, we're on a very similar wavelength here. And like I said, I think people are scared of their own shadow. They're scared to speak on certain topics. And I just think, why? Life's short enough, you know. I think if you can't have free speech, you can't speak your mind. It's like, what's the point? So, yeah, I don't really care. So if it means I'm banned from entering America for a period of time, if that, because you don't know, half the time you don't know you're banned until you try traveling. You know, it's like, it's what it is. You know, I'd rather be banned and say what's on my mind than sort of like hide in the shadows, keep my mouth shut, and then just like pander to people just to sort of get through and things. It's like, nah, that don't work with me. So let's have a look. So let's get the picture up. There we go. So that's my channel anyway. So this is what I'm saying. Like, there's my politics society playlist. I've got other playlists, but I can't remember the exact one, and I'm not going to go through my videos and start trying to figure out the exact line. But within that playlist, you'll find content where I've said about the Mount Rushmore thing and some other things, and it's literally everything's playing out how I thought it would. To be honest, as much as I don't like Trump, I always saw he would be good and useful for a reason, and I stick by that. He's here to destabilize the foundations, really, because even though he's not he's a very inept leader, morally corrupt. The political system, even not just in America but around the world, a lot of it's corrupt anyway. It's just hidden in the shadows more. But he is so outspoken and so obvious. It brings it to the forefront like more rapid. So I think personally it will create an awful lot of growth as a consequence. That's not his intention, but as a consequence it will. So there'll be reforms. There'll be, like especially in America, for instance, they'll have to start repelling some of the powers that an American president has to give, so one person has less power over making very significant decisions that affect the people in general, really, and then even the governance and rules. So I think personally, the power of a president will be weakened as a consequence if there's ways around it to put in new legislation. Like personally, that's what I think, and I think that's what Trump's doing in his thing. So from that point of view, you'd say that's good, isn't it? That it's shining a light. But again, he's not his intention, so I wouldn't give him any props for it. So we've got 3 videos. I'm not sure which order we're doing. I mean, let's have a look. Yeah, this one straight away. I was like, oh, this guy just doesn't know. He doesn't know when to stop. He's already making executive orders to give people pardons and things, which gives them immunity. So let's say they've done something really bad, and he's a friend of them or whatever. He's got some sort of connection to it somehow. Then he starts pardoning people. But yet, if you look at it, it's like crazy. You're pardoning criminals or people that don't deserve to be pardoned, and yet you're deporting innocent people, and you're targeting them, and then you target institutions where people are like getting educated, so they have intelligence, because he's terrified of education. He doesn't want to be challenged, so he needs to have idiots. That's what he needs. He needs a population of idiots who are subordinate. That's what they need. So when someone's getting educated, it becomes a threat to their authority and dictatorship. So he's taken on Harvard, which is quite crazy because I don't know enough about colleges and university, but I've watched the TV show Suits. Now I know that's not the best way to go about it, but you know they were all Harvard educated, and it was a thing in the whole program, wasn't it, that we only take on Harvard, which kind of signified the importance of Harvard as a university. So yeah, if that's a huge university that deals with like law and things like that, it's interesting that a very inept leader, although he's the president, there's no way he has the same background as Harvard um, laureates or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, so like for instance, if he surrounds himself with weak people, you've got to wonder even his legal team, how strong is that? Does he have a really strong legal team, or are they just as bumbling as he is? So although he's the president, and you would think he would probably have the best available to him at all times, it's like, does he listen? And you see it as well when you see like court hearings and you see it like live broadcast ones, especially celebrities. They influence their lawyers, for instance. Like the lawyers know better than the defendant and things, but the defendant will say, no, 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 I want you to do this. And I wouldn't be surprised if Trump does that. So let's say he's got a legal team around him and they say, right, this is the best way to deal with it. He'd probably start interfering and go, no, 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 we need to do this. So that's not really to the highest standard because he's deviating it and weakening their roles. That's how I see it. So that'd be really interesting how that plays out because if you think about it, you'd think a university of that with that level of experience and intelligence, I can't see losing to a bumbling president. And that seems a crazy thing to say, really, doesn't it? Anyway, all that to say, we've all heard, or majority of people have heard about the situation with P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever you want to call him. I've had bad feelings with him for a while myself. And I've never really trusted Hollywood per se either. I've always felt there's like a sinister dark side to it all. I mean, and we've all seen it coming out anyway before him. We've seen so many sleazy people use positions of power to dominate, suppress people, and make them subservient and abuse them and exploit. It's a whole dark side to the industry, isn't it? And any level of entertainment, whether it's movies or music, you see it all the time. Even models, it's disgusting. Um, and yeah, so P Diddy's had his influence. And again, it's all isn't it? And then they build strong, powerful connections. And there's even, I'm not going to go deep into it, but there are suggestions he had things to do with Tupac and things, with his like execution and things. And it's like, yeah, this is I think I'm not going to give him a person opinion of that, but I think it's we've seen reports and it seems quite viable, doesn't it? So someone like that, and then they've gone on abusing people, and I've seen stories. I've heard people's. I heard something before. I can't remember where I saw it or read it. I can't remember exactly how I saw it now. I can't remember if I read it or if I saw a video of the person talking about it. But it was quite alarming. A situation with someone that he did something to, and it was like quite disgusting when you heard it. That's P Diddy I'm talking about. So the fact that he could be pardoned at the end of his trial is quite mental, and that would be the ultimate betrayal, I think, to the public, really, in the legal system. And I wouldn't put past Trump to pardon P Diddy. That'd be crazy, though, wouldn't it? You'd go, that is absolutely mental. But I don't even see how he gets by in society anyway. Like when someone's that corrupt, I mean, how do you walk around amongst people? But anyway, let's see what this is because this is where he shows his, because when he's faced with something, he's not expecting it. This is where you get to see the real Trump because he's having to think on the spot. And if he's not given an absolute no immediately, then he starts bumbling or coming up with stuff after. For me, that's him. His initial response is usually what he's thinking, and then after that, he's trying to bumble his way around it to defend himself slightly. But you get an idea of what he's really thinking. And from watching this, I have a strong feeling that he would look to pardon him if he can find a way to do it without it raising hell. But anyway, let's see what he says.
Was a good friend of yours back then. He has since found himself in some very serious legal trouble.
Yeah, that's true.
Would you ever consider pardoning him?
Well, nobody's asked. You had to be the one to ask, Peter, but nobody's asked. But I know people are thinking about it. I know they're thinking about it. I think some people have been very close to asking. First of all, I'd look at what's happening, and I haven't been watching it too closely, although it's certainly getting a lot of coverage. I haven't seen him. I haven't spoken to him in years. He used to really like me a lot, but I think when I ran for politics, he
used to really like me a lot. You have, see, he's quite funny, isn't he? Like he used to like me a lot. So his decision is based on whether he was liked himself. That's rather than something being just and fair and right. It's whether he did like me at one point. He did like me. What's that got to do with pardoning someone? It's outrageous.
Sort of that relationship busted up from what I read. I don't know. He didn't tell me that, but I'd read some little bit nasty statements in the paper all of a sudden. You know, it's different. You become a much different person when you run for politics and you do what's right. I could do other things, and I'm sure he'd like me, and I'm sure other people would like me, but it wouldn't be as good for our country. As we said, our country's doing really well because of what we're doing. So it's not a popularity contest. So I don't know. I would certainly look at the facts. If I think somebody was mistreated, whether they like me or don't like me, it wouldn't have any impact on me.
Diddy was a good
If they like him or not like him, it wouldn't have an impact. Yet one of the first things he was saying there was the fact that, yeah, he did like me at one point. There was not an absolute no to that. And it's saying nothing like, oh, we trust the process or anything like that. And the worrying thing I have with a lot of the decisions he makes with these pardons, it's like he's saying he doesn't know enough about the facts. And the thing is, how would he know the depths of the facts? Because let's say the trial goes on for a while. Let's say there's like an inordinate amount of evidence that you have to sift through. As a president, like one would assume, he must be so occupied with many different things. And it's taken lawyers to sift through so much, and it's taken a whole court proceeding. How would he have the time to go in depth, in detail, and really look at it, whether there was a abuse of power and all sorts of things? How would he have the time to discover that without having to mistreat his current duties? So when he's saying I'll have to have a look, it's like, how would you even have time to have a depth look at that? Sometimes you have to sort of like trust the process, surely. At some point, you have to trust the process to a degree. Otherwise, what's the point of the process? If you don't trust the people who like, have authority to make decisions, then what's the point of putting them in power? He may as well just be jury, judge, and executioner. It's crazy. But he didn't deny it, did he? And then he just tried to deviate by saying how well the country's doing. We're doing good things. We're doing this. And it's not a popularity contest, but yeah, he's showing other things with the other pardons he's done. It's just, he just covers himself. This one made me really laugh because this is the one where it's like, it is all about Trump, and for sure. Like where I said about Mount Rushmore, when this guy said it, I just burst out. I won't obviously burst out laughing this time, but when I watched it, I did. I burst out laughing because it's like, this is exactly where we're going with Trump. It's so obvious. All you got to do is connect dots, and you can see where he was heading. It's all this guy blows it out of proportion, but it's like so true. Because it seems far fetched, but if you gave Trump the option, he would absolutely love this. He would love to have a statue. He would, it's crazy. So let's have a little listen.
Trump. In the world that this administration is building and this committee is enabling, everything is about Donald Trump anyway. Republicans are proposing that we put his face on currency. His name is apparently going to go on Air Force One. You've introduced a bill to add his head to Mount Rushmore. His whims are shaping everything from who gets prosecuted to who gets silenced and who gets to participate in democracy. And so I would not be surprised if one of you actually proposes a 60-foot statue of him looming over the National Mall, as we've taken some liberty to depict what that might be. We're trying to get ahead here and skate to where the puck is obviously going. So let's skip the endless parade of one-offs here. It's far more efficient to just cut to the chase. Let's stop pretending that any of this is about patriotism or efficiency. It is all about power, control, and making everything about one man. So let's just make it official. Show Donald Trump how mindlessly cultish you are. He's going to love this. Let's go ahead and rename the planet Planet Trump.
That's great, Planet Trump, because that's what he wants. He'd love for the Trump moon or something. It's absolutely so mad, isn't it? We live in Trump's world now. That's the crazy part, and it is. He doesn't, yeah, he's a tyrant, but he hides behind this thing. And this is really interesting because that goes down the path of what this guy says. Now, again, there's always going to be people who are far more intelligent than us at certain things. So, of course, we can have perceptions on things and have our own thoughts. But this guy gave a really, really good example of Trump compared to Eastern European countries. I don't know if it was presidents or things, but it's worth having listened to this. It's only short.
He's a demagogue, he's a grifter. It's all transactional. He's obviously morally bankrupt, intellectually limited. And he reminds me of the figures I covered in Yugoslavia who rose up from the swamp of Tito's decayed Yugoslavia, Radovan Karadzic, Slobodan Milosevic, Franjo Tudjman, and Weimar too. I mean, if you look at the collapse of Weimar, you have these buffoonish thugs, which is what the Nazis were. And, you know, these are basically the people, he and the people around him are just mediocrities, goons. So, I mean, we're in big trouble. He's a con artist.
There you go. So we've literally, you got, if you just do that, let me just mute it so we don't keep repeating. You only need that image. Just got people who have been given positions of authority and power. And if you look at them, they're all of them are, well, I don't know about all of them, because I don't know all of them specifically, but you'd argue all of them are morally corrupt. Well, the majority are morally corrupt. And they don't use their positions of authority, power, leadership, whatever, in a good way. And I think too many people, they look up to certain people, or they think, oh yeah, because they've got that position, they're great. It's like they're very weak people. Posture is strong. And I think it's very sad. So something I was thinking of doing, and I probably still will, I might ask, because this is the thing, people that see this far might just think I just deal with general things in life and have an opinion on this, an opinion on that. But I'm very spiritual. I don't always blend the two publicly. I mean, obviously, I do separate content, but sometimes I like to blend things just to keep things interesting for myself, to be totally honest. So we get rid of that one, and then we will do. I think it's this one. No. Yeah, that one. It should be that one. There you go. So we've got in the bottom corner there, because I've tried to do it a bit different. I don't want to just have a camera and it takes up the whole bleeding space unnecessarily. I just really want to show people to shuffle, because, you know, some people like to see things. It's a bit annoying because it's a bit too far that side now, isn't it? It's never easy to do things. But yeah, I think doing a little circle in the corner is probably the best way of doing it. It's really just asking spirit the certain questions. So I've got to make sure it's the right way around. Yeah, they're the right way around. Oh, well, they were nice. I didn't even ask a question yet, but we've got some beautiful cards. Two of Cups, the Emperor. Two of Wands, Ten of Cups. I mean, that look, the Emperor. Let's talk about absolute leadership. You take it whatever way you will, but I see that as that's what they see in me. I find it quite beautiful. So let's see what they think of Trump. Now, what I want to say when it comes to spirit is it's not always what you expect, because even like people, if you take it for example, people in my life, there might be someone I think absolutely poor of, and I might ask spirit, and it might be that they don't see it in such a bad way, because it's the way I've just said about Trump. Although he's morally inept, he is a bit of a tyrant, narcissistic. At the same time, he is a catalyst for change, which undoubtedly he's not doing intentionally for the positive side. But spirit might look at him as a tool, and it might be that we're seeing him in that role. So so if they say something positive, it doesn't necessarily mean he's positive. It might just be they see the positive in his path. So I don't really know what I'm going to specifically ask. Now I've got to turn this way to make the camera a bit easier for my hands, which isn't ideal. I should have sorted the camera out a little better before. I'd have to change the whole scene now to get that camera adjusted in the circle, unfortunately. I'll tell you what, let's start this way, because I think it's the fairest way to start. What does Spirit think about me speaking up about Trump? What does Spirit think about me speaking up about Trump? Oh, wow. Holy shit. All right, well, this is powerful. We did just have the Emperor, didn't I? It's going to be really hard to do it like this camera, unfortunately. Let me see if I can lift it up a little bit just while we do that part. It's so freaking hard. I might even be able to do it on that one, actually. Yeah, that'd be easier. I've got a green screen, so it makes it a bit awkward. But you've got the Emperor here. Then we've got the Queen of Wands, which is passionate, fiery, passionate. And then we've got, there's an innocence. So it's almost like, it's like I'm not letting things get in the way of my logic. It's pure. And, I see many different perspectives. But it's very grounded and stable. Balanced. Yeah, so the fact that the Emperor come out, even the Emperor on its own, I'm very powerful in the way I deliver, I guess. And that they see it in a very powerful, positive way, successful. That's nice. Okay. So I've got a positive result. I'll take that one. Yeah, I think the camera might be better that way, actually, to be on a little bit higher, maybe. Um, what does Spirit think about Donald Trump? What does Spirit think about Donald Trump? Well, I might change it. I think it's too open. I'm going to be specific. What did my spirit guides think about Donald Trump? You know what? I'm going to say something did come out there, but I didn't think anything was going to come in the end because I had this feeling that they don't want to get involved in politics. And you hear that a lot with, I can't remember what it is. Is it? There was something before. I don't know if anyone's heard of Bashar. He channels this other race that's monitoring activity on Earth, but they don't like getting involved in politics. Every time he asks a question specifically about politics, they don't like to interfere. And I wouldn't be surprised if Spirit's a bit like that. But we did get the Knight of Swords. So obviously the knight is faster than a page, and it's all about it's all about communication. So the way, like I said before, like it brings about change, and that's how they're seeing him. Someone that brings about change. Well, that's why I'm interpreting that because it's quite strange that he's got it's not slow paced, and like I said, they won't always see things in the negative. And again, this is just my guide's impressions of. But then why am I getting the Ten of Cups coming out? That's weird. How the hell get you Ten of Cups from him? Ten of Cups is beautiful. Ten of Cups is like it's almost like a happy ever after. You know, like everything's emotionally fulfilled. I think off the back of Trump, because that's what I've been saying. Like I think once Trump's been dealt, once Trump's had his term, and things will change off the back of him, not because of him, not like in a positive because he did. I think that's what comes after him because everything's being churned up. And that's how I kept seeing it. So although I don't like him and I could pick apart everything he does, it's like I also see the change that comes on the back of what he does, you know? Because if you go look at everything from different perspectives, for every corruption that exists, the world's noticing it and they can't continually turn a blind eye. So eventually things have to be sort of shown, unraveled and then remedied. And then maybe the world becomes more balanced and then people's lives get better, you know? Well, I know we've got the lovers and the hangman. The problem is I'm not asking questions about him anymore. There's just coming out lovers and the hangman, so I'm not really sure what it's in reference to. Where's that hangman in first? No, it's hangman. Hangman is a moment of reflection, isn't it? It can be introspection. It can be reflection, you know, thinking about your next move, thinking about what to do next. But then you've got the lovers, which is like a union. I think that's what it does. I think it forces people. I think it's going to, through all these changes, it's going to force people to reconnect, I think, personally. Focus on what matters the most, you know? And it's going to be it's going to be connections with people. Especially look at that, you got the angels behind it as well. Um, don't really know what else to ask about him because the guy's a fool. But I'll get a lot of victory cards and things off the back of this, you know? Like, look, we've got a financial, like, everything's frozen in time, but then there's going to be like a victory and then stability. So it's worth watching how this develops over the next few years because I think that's the case. I think once Trump's had his time, I think there'll be opportunity after this. I think it's just unifying people. I think that's probably where the lovers comes and things, you know. I think people are going to unify. The more you get corruption, you start having people come together, and that becomes incredibly powerful. So that's gonna be really interesting. And you got um, that's actually my no card. I've got an actual no card in my deck. That's my no card, but that's obviously heartbreak, betrayal, and loss and things. Um, Although on the other side of that, that could be spirit saying no to what I just said. It's just, you know, it's open to interpretation, of course. Right, let's do something because I'm not asking for anything specific at the minute. It's just me rambling a little bit. Does spirit want me to continue to speak up against Trump and his injustices? Ah, well, King of Wands, fiery, passionate, um, as a leader. Yeah. So, yeah. So I mean, effectively, that's the thing. People might not some of the things you say. They might not like the perspective and things, but we all have a role in this lifetime, and it's playing our part. You know. So look, got it again. When I showed the cards before, I had the Page of Cups and I had the Seven of Cups, didn't I? And now it's changed slightly. We've got, I think, Karma's Judgment. It's a different deck. So now we've got the Page of Cups again. This time we've got Karma, which is Judgment. Then you've got your options, and then you've got the Nine of Cups. So Nine of Cups it's like wish fulfillment. So you're fulfilling. I say that more like you're fulfilling prophecy, I guess, because because you've got the judgment with it as well. So you're calling judgment on things. So um, holding things accountable, really, and then the Page of Cups and things. So yeah, it's just if people don't, if you, the reality is instigating change. But if people don't talk about certain things, then those changes maybe they don't surface, and maybe people don't have a moment to reflect because it's by shining a light on things, people can then see the corruption for themselves because you can talk about it, but it's up to people to interpret too. So you can raise an awareness and then people can decipher for themselves. But maybe if you don't speak on something, they're not aware of what just happened. And also maybe they're not looking at it from the angle that perhaps they should be looking. So that's why it's interesting that we have our own interpretation of things. My screen just flashed for some weird reason as I said that. That's strange. Doesn't do that in general. Yeah, I haven't really got a lot to ask about him at the minute because I think he's a buffoon. Here you go. Does Donald Trump want his face on Mount Rushmore? I'll tell you what I was going to ask, but I don't really want to go there, to be honest. It's a bit controversial. Five of Swords. If you go yes, no, Five of Swords is like a no card. But it's more of like a challenge. Look at that. I think it's either a moth or a butterfly, but you've got like a butterfly with all these swords coming at you. So like, I know it's a no card, and I'm not going to sort of pretend it's not. But if you actually look at it, you've got this butterfly, and you've got these swords trying to stab at it. And yeah, I have my own opinion on it, but yeah, Spirit obviously knows more than I do. Don't really know what else to ask, to be totally honest. Like a harmony balance. So, just trying to think in general, really. Not sure what to ask. Um, yeah, I'm not going to do it. I was going to ask what Jesus thinks of Trump, but I don't want to go down that path, to be totally honest. I don't want to sort of bring in faith, like deep faiths to things. Because it'd be quite controversial, I think, one way or another. So, again, because they do see you have to look at that like in general when you look at tyrants and things that have happened sometimes, and I've said it in one of my books, is sometimes it takes some really like horrible dark moments, some suffering, some deep suffering to instigate profound change. So if you think about it, like people, like you go through personal changes in your life because the catalyst was often you've been through hardship, you've been through abuse, you've been through something, and it changes you. You heal from it, and it's the catalyst for that change. So although it's not fair you went through it, if without it, maybe you wouldn't be who you are today or who you're becoming in the future. You know. So if you think about that, that takes a whole long process. It's an individual thing. If you want to have a profound change on huge, immense societies, it's going to require a substantial negative, isn't it? A huge amount of instability to create that fundamental change for the next generation. And that's how I see things. So um, that's why I try to see the silver lining in the negative periods. Like you can look and go, wait a minute, I can see where that's heading, and it's actually going to be there's going to be a lot of fireworks at the end of that. So, yeah, there will be. I consider there to be profound change coming off the back of things. But yeah, I'm not really going to involve Spirit much, really, because I don't want to bother them with every little thing and then create a lot of controversy, you know? Plus, I don't really know what else to ask, because I could start going down the path of other leaders and things, but I don't really want to start involving with that. Getting all political with it. It's just, that's not the point. Because normally I'd ask in private, like my team, and I'd ask what they think of this, how am I doing with that, and they're always favourable of the way I am, the way I do my content. I mean, in the past, sometimes I was like, should I post this? Should I not post this? And they was always like, I always got the cards. So sometimes like the odd video I might have got no, and I'm like, it made me question it, and I go, yeah, I can see why. And then a lot of the time now, like now especially, and even a lot before, it was yeah, go for it. It's gonna be that's great. Do it, do it, do it. And it's the same there where I've asked, what do you think about my content? Recent like challenging him, they're all for it, you know. And do you want me to continue doing it in the future? And it's like, absolutely, you know. So yeah, like people can be the catalyst for change, even if they're not intending to be. So like I say, where Trump might not have the positive of intentions, but he's still doing something that's going to help humanity in the long term, because he's churning it up. You know, he's churning up the layers. Because you could sit there and say all the previous. If you go, like, I'm not going to go America specifically. Well, we can do, but if you go through all the previous presidents, there was issues all along the line. Like even Obama, you know, you hear him talk, and I think he's respectable. You can trust him to a degree, but I'm not sure all of his policies were great. I can't remember exactly, but I know there were some things people had problems with. And I think Biden, he seemed like he was just sleeping on the job. It seemed to be like people just telling, if that's the impression I got, people were telling him what to do, and that was literally what he was doing. And he just didn't seem like he had the mental capacity, because it's like he's got dementia or something. It just looked crazy, didn't it? But you know, Obama was a huge part of his campaign. So yeah, I'm not saying Obama's bad, because I always thought he was intelligent. He articulates incredibly well, and he seems to have good intentions for the most part. But again, I think when politics is shady, you can't always be 100%. I think anyone that becomes involved in politics and things, there's always going to be one. You're going to have to make a decision, and sometimes it's going to have a negative effect one way or another, and you can't win. So I think there's always that situation where you can't always pick the middle ground and play it safe. Politics isn't like that. You're going to pick one side, you're going to have to do something here and here, and there's always going to have to be a case. Again, politics is shady. Sometimes you're going to have to appease someone this side for them to help you on this side. So there's a whole process. So try not to judge too heavily with that. But then you've got all the ones before. And there's, you know, when it comes to leaders of any country and things, or any political party, a lot of the time you've got to think, at what point in history, at whereabouts was the best leader? So and that's where it gets scary, because any country, you can even do it in the UK, you go, well, who's the best leader we've ever had, or of recent years? And everybody always hates the current leaders. And that means they weren't really enamored with the previous ones. And I think personally, if you go far enough back, this is what I think. And I don't know enough in the UK. I don't know enough leaders, to be totally honest. Politics isn't really my interest to a degree. But I think a lot of people go back to Margaret Thatcher, the fact that she was firm with, I don't know exactly. I don't know if she was firm with, what are they called? Unions. Was she firm with unions? And I think she was firm about the UK stance, like around the world with war and things. I think she was a very combative leader, should we say. And I think that's polarizing. Some people absolutely hate her and they say bad things. Some people absolutely loved her for it. And I just think, if you think after her, has there been anyone people really, really liked? I don't think so. I don't think, a lot of people don't trust Blair because of the Iraq stuff that happened there. And then you see like the people he supports after that, and maybe the charities or whatever he's doing. And he just seems to be aligned with very corrupt people. So he doesn't seem very trustworthy at all. So in hindsight, you look back and think, well, was he the best person to lead then? Thinking that, although these people have intelligence, they're not always of the positive mindset or really doing things for the good. So there's that problem. Boris Johnson was just lying continuously. He's likable to a degree, but you can't trust a word that comes out of his mouth. He just mumbles and bumbles. He was giving contracts to people he knew, or people that worked for his cabinet, and they knew people, and they were getting the massive contracts that weren't really in the British interest. It was more to do with people becoming rich off the back of an opportunity. That's what that seemed to me. Again, there's just corruption rife throughout all of politics, really. Don't matter what country you're in. And again, you go in America, like for instance, so naturally, I think the people that would stand out to me, if you say in the UK, the best politicians we've had, and I'm not saying they're the best, it's just people come to mind. I don't really trust any of them. But you've got, I'd say, Winston Churchill, because he's, managed to get Britain through the World War. I know there's people after that. I don't know if was it Winston or something? I can't remember. I don't know the names. There's people around that period. And then, of course, you have got like Margaret Thatcher. But well, I don't know, and then I think if you go back in America, there's been scandal after scandal, hasn't there? I don't know if there was one during the Cold War. I'm sure there was someone. Was it Reagan? I don't know. I don't know the names. I know the names, but I don't know which one. I know there was one there was a bit of corruption around. But again, I don't know who America would say if you said who was the best president you had. And of course, I guess it's going to be whoever's on Mount Rushmore, really, isn't it? I think a lot of people favoured Lincoln. But again, I think sometimes history is warped because it's considered that he's the one that freed slavery. But I think some people argued something different. I can't remember. I don't know if someone else freed slavery or if he still had slavery. I don't know the exact things for that. I think George Washington. I'm not sure. I don't know who those roles are. I don't know if George Washington took. Was he the Battle of Gettysburg or something? I'm not. I don't know. If I'm wrong there, don't throw me under the bus. I don't know enough about that sort of stuff. But I think the point really is, the concern I have is the amount of leaders that every country goes through, and when you think about it deep enough, which ones remain positive in memory. Again, they're not always going to do the things you want because they've got to make so many decisions. But which ones? Sometimes it's not about who did the best, but who do you trust? That's really interesting. What leaders would you trust to lead again? And you don't. A lot of them. Sometimes you can see it in people's faces. That's one thing I would say. Sometimes you've got like these leadership opportunities, and you go, "I don't trust him. I don't trust her. I don't trust any of them. They don't have. They haven't got a face I trust because I don't trust a damn thing that comes out of their mouth." Either, and it's like, again, it's that the reality is that most people with these positions, they've had to do some deceptive things to get there. That's politics. So for the majority of people that get to the top, you've got to think how many people have had to throw under the bus to get there, and how many times have had to sell their soul to gain that opportunity. And I think that's quite sad, isn't it? That I don't think many countries have had inspirational leaders. Because a lot of time, when you think about like people in history, and you think the best people are the ones that are legendary. Now, of course, it's historic. That's why it's in history. But you would argue the names that people think of, they've done things of significance in their time, And it's like, if you think about the current generation and the recent previous, they've done nothing of positive significance to be remembered or endeared. They won't go down in history, yet they think they're so important. They won't be remembered for good, and they'll be long forgotten later because they all blend together. That's why I was saying, like, if you think about the people, it was like, from my memory, of course I can pick off a few names, but overall you're going Winston Churchill and Margaret Thatcher because they actually did something profound in their time. So they do get remembered, whereas the others, they just blend together. They really are insignificant. They're not that important. It's just, but yet they think they're so important, But then you think of people in history, you've got like Jesus, you've got Buddha, you've got Joan of Arc, Mary Magdalene, It's just, if you think about it, it's usually positive people. People who had a real positive change. And it makes you wonder, like, why can't these leaders go down a similar vein and maybe they'll get revered and endeared? But they don't. They go down the negative path, a bit like Hitler. So now you've got these really, really deranged people who will go down in history for the wrong reason. But for some reason, some people, as long as they're remembered, they don't really care what for, do they? And they put themselves in such, they consider themselves so significant in life that they don't really care. And then that becomes their legacy because they get caught up in so much greed. And they go on power trips, and it's quite crazy, isn't it? And yet, think about it. If you had that position of leadership and authority, and you use that in the purest way possible and really try to create and instigate good, like really make profound positive change, think of the opportunity that would give you to be revered. So I don't understand why people like Trump and that, they just do so much negative shit. And it's like, for what though? To what overall goal? Because you're just going down the same as every other tyrant, and that's what you'll be remembered for. You'll be remembered for sure, but not for positive reasons. And that's something really I think people should consider, is if you're going to talk about legacy, then think about what that legacy is you leave behind. And like most people in life, unfortunately for them, are forgettable. You only really get remembered for doing something really, really bad or something really, really good. And personally, I think if it's going to be for something really, really bad, you're better off just being forgotten. Better off being forgettable. What's the point of being remembered for something bad? It's no one respects that at all. You get some lunatics that follow lunatics, but overall, no one respects that. It becomes the barometer of like guidance of what not to do, doesn't it? I don't want to go down too deviant around all that stuff, but yeah, I don't really like keep talking about Trump, but he gives you every reason to, doesn't he? He's a freaking nightmare. Yeah, society is a bit of a mess at the moment, but I always see the positives, so I do see things improving. Like, I personally don't think it's very healthy for one nation to have control of the planet in the first place. I think, like, if, for instance, America's currency, the dollar, a lot of things were, a lot of trade and the economies around the world were based on American dollar, which was what everybody else's was usually lower or whatever. But it's like now things are changing where the people are realizing they can't rely on America all the time. So now they're having other ways of doing trade, and I'm not sure what the metrics are where they compare currencies and things, but you could just see, like, I think that reliance on one country, that lack of reliance on one country, I think helps the rest of the world thrive a bit more. Because when one has dominance, they overexert it, and everybody else has to bend to them. Otherwise, they get ostracized and alienated, and it makes their economy suffer. So when you negate that, I think overall it makes the world more fair, and it makes it more dynamic. It makes it more flexible. So personally, I think America being weaker on the world stage actually helps the rest of the world become stronger, because it makes America fall in line with the rest of the world. So there's less dominance. And I think for me personally, I think that's positive. Because America's for too long, and I think it goes in waves. You had the British Empire and you've had other empires, the Roman Empire, you had it. And America's been acting for the past 100 years or whatever they've been doing it for. They've been acting like they're the world leaders and they're the ones policing the world. So they may not be an empire per se, where they're just taking land and dominating, but they certainly act like they are an empire. And like all empires, they come to an end. And sometimes it's about focusing more at home rather than the rest of the world for a bit. And I think that's where America has been hiding. They've been spending so much on military and powering and posturing, while people at home suffer. You know, the cost of living's always been high. You've seen that. I think you've got an awful lot of homelessness. You've got an awful lot of drug use, a lot of gang violence, a lot of gun violence. Healthcare systems are shambles. It's incredibly expensive. It's quite corrupt. The political system is a mess. It's fairly corrupt. It's not fit for purpose to a degree. But they've been sort of like, as America does, they do a distraction tactic where they get people to focus on other things, especially wars, and they even instigate it. We've seen that anyway, where there's been issues at home where they've done things on their own territory to distract the public and then give them something to attack elsewhere. And they'll do that for their own propaganda. It's quite crazy. So, like, America needs to focus now on re-establishing itself at home, I think, and strengthening itself, rather than keep posturing on the world stage. And then they become stronger. And again, maybe that's what will change. And then other maybe nations begin to heal too. You know, so I think everything comes around full circle. There's usually a bigger reason to things. But whether that really happens, who knows? But that's really what needs to happen, doesn't it? Because there's no point trying to be a world authority, try to lead by example, when at home it's a mess. It doesn't make sense, does it? But anyway, that's my views on Trump and America as a whole at the moment. But things change, you know, things could improve. America could become incredibly beautiful. You know, but it takes immense amount of change. And I think the real problem is once you've established certain politics and certain things, and I think especially when you're historical, people keep harping on about amendments. Now, in case I understand that means everything to people. It's like literally what they stand for. And it's like what their ancestors sort of did and everything else. But I sometimes think you've got to lean away from history and start creating your own history, you know? So if you keep leaning on it and it's not fit for purpose, it's like a bit like religions, you know, not everything's really beneficial nowadays. Some things don't quite line up. They don't really conform. It's a good guide mark and things like that. But it's like sometimes you have to do things differently, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you keep living in the past, that's where you stay there. And again, if you think about the past, when was it ever beautiful? When was Earth ever a utopia? So if it was never a utopia, why are we leaning back in the past all the time? Shouldn't we be building a better future? So maybe start to change those amendments for the positive, actually have deep conversations and create profound change. Maybe it starts with less violence around the world. So maybe start taking away weapons from people, and it'll stop people being so reactive. Like, that's my problem. Like, if you're talking about gun control in America, I think the real problem is if someone's mentally unhinged, they're going through a depressive moment, they're struggling for whatever reason, I think it's easy to be impulsive and grab a gun. And they don't really care about the collateral damage, because in that moment, they've got nothing to lose. It's a very weak thing for people to take other people with them, though, I think, personally, rather than just, you know, if you can't cope on your own. But don't really ruin other people's lives as a consequence. But yeah, anyway, you take that opportunity away, then people maybe have time to sort of think and maybe heal. But if you don't, they do something that changes other people's lives and their own. It's just, That's just unnecessary, isn't it? So, of course, you could argue but you need to be able to defend yourself. But again, if people were healed and there wasn't so much violence around the world, you wouldn't have so much to have to defend. So it goes in one way or another. But the reality is, by having guns on the streets and in your homes all the time, it's almost like life's just a constant battlefield. That's the real problem, isn't it? So you have to maybe look at it that way. Wars are not just fought on the battlegrounds; they're actually fought on the streets where you have weapons everywhere. So it's no different. Not going to go on a huge tangent with that. Completely separate. But hopefully it's been some sort of interest to people.